The emissions from crops are actually primarily from crop residues which are ploughed into the ground at the end of the season. If we have our 45 tonnes of oats that we had previously, this time we'll add in some barley for whisky or other purposes, and brassicas. (109). You see, it's fairly simple to put this data in, though it's probably quite useful to prepare it beforehand. I'm going to look at the other soil sources because in our website this does cover things. Variety of improved grassland, histosoils, application of lime, and for this farm we're assuming that they've actually put on 30 tonnes of lime in the last year. Application of dolomite, and also the removal of peat. This can be the removal of peat for horticultural, selling for horticultural use, or in the northwest of Scotland for burning in fires. Date, and we go down to forestry. The forestry is much more detailed than has been previously available on the website. Here we can actually choose, give labels of the plantations so that you can identify them if you've got, say, 4 patches of forestry. So we have a fairly large area of Sitka spruce. It was planted some time ago, let's say 1980, and it is on average quality ground. In our help we will give you information about the growth curves which relate to the average, poor and good quality ground. And in this case we haven't felled, we haven't got to the stage of harvesting the crop, so we haven't taken out clear felled timber. We also have beech, a beechwood, which was planted a bit earlier in 1970 and covers 405 hectares. So we have to select the tree species here, and again we're going to select average growing conditions. Recently there was a plantation of birch in 1995. We have 688 hectares of that. Again, select the species and select the growing conditions. And finally, with some lodgepole, use this shelter belt, 100 hectares of that, planted in 1975. And we'll assume that that is again on average ground. Update, and that data is stored in the website. The final thing we're going to enter is some land use change. This is similar to the entry in the V0 calculator, except this time we have the selection of the country, the soil type in the categories. We were natural to farm grass, was 30 hectares, but we also have the requirement to enter a year in which there was a management change. So let's assume that that was done in 1982. Once you've entered all your data, you can go back to the V2 control panel and said we've edited the settings before we started that, so we're using the standard UK livestock and we're going to have CO2 only output. Create a name for the report. Create the report. You'll get a request that you know that you only asked for CO2 display on the output, and you know that you will pay 1 credit for generating that report. Going down here, we click on the report. It comes up as a new window. You can print this report on your own printer, or you can copy it out into an Excel spreadsheet if you want to. In this report again we list the categories that we've entered, we list the average usage units, the CO2 equivalent emissions, and we give the lower and upper bounds. You see that for the energy category, where there's a lot of information about the efficiency of burn and so on, we actually get a fairly tight set of bounds. They're quite close to the central value. When, however, we go to livestock, where the main emission here is from methane and N2O, less well known, a CO2 equivalent here of 210 tonnes, but a lower bound of 40 and an upper bound of 650 tonnes. Going down through the categories, they're all listed with their totals for each section, and we have a summary at the bottom. If I just make this screen a little bit bigger so that we can see it all. Just as in the free calculator, we have listing of, in this case, CO2 equivalent rather than carbon equivalent, because that is what the industry has moved towards. The emissions from various farming activities, the sequestration to the forestry, and the emission from the earlier land use change. And in this farm, with that amount of forestry, the sequestration to the forest clearly dominates, and the farm is taking in and locking up carbon from the atmosphere.